So we're recording. Salomon, thank you very much for accepting to do this. I'm actually very, very excited that you said yes to this. This is the third one of our chats.
You actually had a chat with Paul Nevison,
I did.
A friend of mine, who I spent 3 years working with in Sydney, actually.
No way, no way.
Yeah, we were working together for 3 years, yeah. I was learning a lot from him, actually, at the time.
Let's start with that. What's your background? You in addition to being a very well-known director right now, you're based in New York, but you have a very interesting international background, right? So it's there's a Karim speaking to a Salomon, which actually feels like from the Bible.
Right. Yeah, I've met a lot of Karims in my life.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine.
I grew up in South Africa. My early childhood was growing up in Pretoria, or a neighborhood in Pretoria, South Africa.
Yep.
And then we moved to Johannesburg, or an area called Kempton Park in Johannesburg of South Africa, which is where the main airport is located. So it's a very industrial kind of a rough area. My parents were missionaries in my early years. Spent a lot of time kind of traveling around. Spent a lot of time in Turkey and Russia. And we would go and live with other people when we were younger. So I feel like even kind of in my early childhood years, I had quite a nomadic life. And also quite an international opportunity and influence. Yeah. So my parents would come back and tell me stories and show me photographs, and we would go to like missionary camps when we were younger.
Yep.
Learned languages.
Yep. And how many do you speak?
I speak 2, but when I was younger, I had to learn Russian, and so obviously, I have a very kind of basic understanding of Russian, Arabic, even a little bit of Farsi. I mean, I feel like my interest in languages, because I travel a lot for work, and it's strange. Like within a couple of weeks, I can kind of pick up a couple of basic greetings.
Because your brain is trained with the novelty of your nomadic nature, right? Your nomadic background, right? So it's
probably, yeah. I do think, again, I don't want to kind of pat myself on the shoulder too much, but I have an interest in it. Like
I feel the same way. Like, right? I have an Iranian mother, who spoke to me in Farsi, and Italian father, but I was born in Geneva, and I speak English, I guess, and
So, yeah, you know the experience.
Yeah.
I was chatting to a guy actually earlier last week, and we were talking about what it feels like to be outsiders. Because I do think in today's climate, to tell stories of where you're from is vitally important, but it's really tough because I don't really know, I don't really think I'm from one place.
Yeah.
What do we feel? My feeling is that I'm not from any one place. And so my interest has always been to kind of look abroad almost, or like turn over stones in other contexts. Because I don't know, I'm always like interested and fascinated by like truthful core human stories, but expressed in different contexts.
But do you think that has influenced? I mean, it's kind of a rhetorical question, but that has influenced your work, right? I mean, the type of work that you do, both in the imagery, but also in the storytelling, it's very much about people, right? It's very much about beauty. 2 things. One, I would say about you. One is beauty, right? The beautiful way you actually express your thoughts, and the other one is like your short film about the rockets like is a very interesting story that is actually based on a true story, right? So it's actually a reality-based story. So I think that is very interesting to me, because there's something that is very talented about the way you do things, and I'm saying it honestly because I know your work, and I'm, we're kind of getting to the YDA part of this, but
right.
I think it's very, very interesting to me that you are curious. It feels like you're curious. I mean, I don't know you, but I mean,
right.
we're getting to know each other, but
right.
it feels like there's a curiosity. I mean, do you feel curious about trying new things and trying new worlds and looking at new things in a different way and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think I mean, this laptop is sitting on a bunch of books that are like, a bunch of, like, this book is about North Korea, and I've got a book just below it that's about Russian prisons, and I've got a book just and this book is about Coney Island, because I'm like writing a feature that's set in Coney Island. So places and the people that inhabit those places are really interesting to me. I think it's because it's the background that I've had, with my parents traveling, and also having like moved around all over the place, and so I'm always and for me, since I've had a dad, and I think it's even like, since I am a dad, and I think me navigating my relationship with my dad, I think a lot of the core stories that I'm like looking at, it's not even in my work that I've done, but looking kind of forward into like wanting to tell longer form stories. I'm always interested in stories about fathers and sons, or parents and their children. The thing that I'm like exploring now in 3 different films, 2 short films and a feature, is really essentially that story, but explored in different contexts. One set in a kind of a small Dust Bowl town in the outskirts of California. Another one is basically set in New York, but it kind of travels back to Africa, of a person like exploring his past of his parents in Africa. And the other one is set in Brighton Beach, Coney Island. And none of them are set in South Africa, but I do have an idea that I do want to go explore in South Africa. Actually, if like a feature idea for maybe one day down the line. But all that to say, there is not one place that feels like it's like, oh, I can only tell a story.
I understand. I mean, it's like you have a lot of places that you probably like. There's not one place that you want to be rooted in yet. You probably will find your root at a certain point, right? The place you want to be rooted in, let's put it that way. And it's interesting to me because the question that comes to my mind in chatting is, or in thinking about, this background that you talk about, is when did the filmmaking come in? I mean, do you have that artistic streak in your family somehow? Or was it a will from inside? Was it a thing from inside?
I think I have a curious streak from my family. But in a very different context. My grandfather was a professor. I think he studied in MIT, or he taught at MIT for a while. Like went out of South Africa and had like a time in MIT. So science is a massive curiosity in my family, and I think there's a creative element to problem solving that way. My aunt is super bright. My grandfather was super bright, and my dad, again, like his interest was as a missionary to kind of go out and explore the world in that way. But he's also he's a businessman, and he's a programmer, started his own business. So I think there's an kind of inherent curiosity in my family, but I think the quote unquote creative artistic side, I'm probably one of the first people in my family to kind of go down that route. But I think, and I think my dad was super supportive of that, because I think I did relatively well in high school, and there was an opportunity after schooling to go and study abroad and go into science, applied mathematics. But my dad, when I was 16, I was in an international school, and I was not. The school didn't have a lot of extracurricular activities, and so I didn't really connect in school. I would do the work, but I was so focused on music That's like, I started playing guitar when I was 12, and my dad saw my fascination with music, and that I was like trying to sing and learn and everything. So my dad bought me a Pro Tools recording setup when I was 16 years old, like a pretty like legit setup. And I got so interested in that, I started recording other people's music. And by the time I had finished high school, my dad kind of looked at the opportunities that were available to me, and he said, well, you can go and study science and applied mathematics, but I know that your love and your passion is music somewhere else. So he was like, how about I pay for recording engineering degree? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I think like my dad, like I've got a massive soft spot obviously for my parents, but especially my dad, just like opening that up for me, you know. I started doing recording engineering, and then 2 years after that, I did 2 years of that, and then a year after that I was working as a sound engineer, but I had a lot of time on my hands, and so I started dabbling in motion graphics. And then I was dating my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time, and she was like, motion graphics is cool, but it's kind of cold. She was like, why didn't you like introduce people into it? That's when I picked up a camera. I was 23. I picked up a camera. I was like, okay, let me start filming, and then things kind of snowballed.
That's very interesting to me, because that actually there's a piece of art in Milan when you'll come here next time, right? There's a piece of art when you actually take the train from the Malpensa train station, Malpensa airport, which is our big airport. You take the Malpensa Express, like most big cities have an express that takes you from the airport to the city. So when you come to the station, there's a on the walkway right outside the train, there's a plaque on the ground, which is actually an art piece by an Italian artist called Garutti, and the plaque says every step you've taken in life has taken you here now.
Interesting.
Right? So people actually stop there and take a picture of them stepping on it, right? It's kind of but it's interesting, because I really think that every step that one takes in life makes you who you are, right? So when you tell me the story about how you actually got there, it's interesting because you have had a very big influence in your life, which is probably your father, who kind of gave you the nudge. Otherwise, you probably might have done something that you would have done well, but maybe not liked as much.
Totally.
So it is interesting to me that is kind of the path that you've taken, and you bumped into it. You learned it going along, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, I didn't have a education in film. I just had an interest, and I think one thing my dad always taught me is essentially follow your curiosity. You've got to do what you love, because I think that's the thing with my dad. Like, he studied to become, I can't remember, it's either like, I think he studied engineering, and it's not what he's doing now, you know. And he just like let his intuition kind of guide him, and he's built a life like that, you know.
I like that. That's fantastic.
And it's kind of been the same for me.
You know, it's interesting because I wanted to become a director, but I ended up becoming a producer by life, right? Life kind of took me in different places, and I realized that I might not have been the directors that I loved looking at or finding out. So, you know, our life as producers is like finding talent and going to look for them and and nurturing them and having them grow with you, you know, or sometimes
totally, excuse me.
So it's interesting to me that is kind of each person's path, which brings me to the young director that you are.
Thanks for calling me a young director. I appreciate that.
Hey, which is the interesting thing is that you actually won the YDA not only in more than 1 year, but also you're one of the few that has won it in different categories with different types of work, right? So short film category, I think, if I remember correctly, music video category, commercial category. So that to me is significantly the clear output of what we're talking about, right?
Right.
You have been interested in expressing stories of different kinds.
Right.
So the point is, from a purely self-taught filmmaking perspective,
right,
who is your influence? Have you been influenced by somebody? Is there a kind of storyteller or even artist or filmmaker that have influenced you?
Yeah, definitely. But for various, there's specific directors.
For each category, there's one, right? Or 10, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and this is more recent, but I think when I look at the career, but also the starting blocks of Scorsese, there's a kind of a resonant frequency that I share with him. He wanted to go into like seminary, and he was kind of deciding between film and seminary, and I kind of have like a similar spiritual kind of interest as him, partly of kind of obviously that I've mentioned the way we've grown up. But I never felt like that was the life. I never wanted to go into ministry. Like that was not something I wanted to do. But I felt like that's always just come out of me in terms of like the things that I've like wanted to say or express. Anyway, and
it was part of your life. I mean,
it's part of how I've grown up. It's the parents that I've had. So I feel like that kind of spiritual wrestling in life kind of bleeds over into work, and it's not intentional, but it comes out. It's just, again, like every part of someone's life is going to spill over. And I've never noticed that in Scorsese's work until like the last 2-3 years. And I'm like, wow. And then listening to him speak, I'm like, it's amazing to me that he's, I think when in my teenage years, that was a part of my life that I just kind of wanted to close off, because I just it's always such a sensitive thing, but I think when you become an adult, you start to look at what makes you who you are.
Exactly.
And you start to become unapologetic about it in a way. And seeing that in Scorsese is really interesting, even as an old man, like that he's exploring now is like, and they're not critical success. And like Silence, for instance, is not a critical success, but you can see it in Mean Streets. You can see it in Goodfellas. You can see it throughout his career. So I've really loved that about him. But then from an aesthetic standpoint, I love Kubrick. I mean, you can see like that project behind me is a kind of a personal work personal project that I worked on, and I'm definitely inspired by his visual aesthetic. Jacques Audiard to me is another incredible filmmaker, obviously French filmmaker, but he explores stories that are so raw. They have a very different aesthetic. Matteo Garonne. Dogman and Gomorrah, some of my favorite films, and they're kind of the same. Him and Jacques Audiard kind of have the same, almost like visual language, and I love that. The
grittiness, right? The beautiful, ugly reality.
Exactly. And I feel like that's almost like that's my most comfort zone. That's like the stories that inherently I feel like I want to tell stories like that. But then I also like cerebral. Stories like Kubrick, those are probably some of the filmmakers that I'd like look at and I go, wow, so maybe one day that's a career I can do.
So, which is kind of what I was getting to. Your dream, knowing that you've been very good at doing shorter formats and commercials and music videos, and you've tried them all, and I think it makes you very much a contemporary filmmaker, filmmaking director. That filmmaker is a whole different. So I think this is very interesting to me, because you go from one part to another, from one you cross the borders. I always say that the borders are very liquid nowadays. So there's no border like there was, and when you cross it, nobody kind of says, oh my God, you're going into TV series, you're moving into features. Oh my God, what is that? and people actually move very easily nowadays. So, so is your goal now longer formats? You mentioned it kind of like, is your goal like to do a feature?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, my earliest memories of being moved by films was sitting down with my dad and watching. We were always like watching action films with my dad. You know, so Man on Fire, for instance, is a film that him and I like, loved when I was younger, and it's such an experience that I will remember.
Denzel Washington, right?
Is it Denzel Washington, old school Tony Scott.
Tony Scott,
but I like vividly remember those experiences with my dad. Obviously, like I remember experiences when I was younger, like Lion King and crying during Lion King, watching that and being so moved by it. But I think my interest from a world building standpoint and from a like emotionally invested with characters came alive when I was watching these films with my dad, you know. And my dad was a massive like Pacino, De Niro fan, you know, and I've kind of grown up again. When you grow up, you start to realize, whoa, what things really did influence me, and you know, it's those early times with my dad. So
only when you grow up you can do that, you know that, right? It's like, you know, another famous writer said, you know, that you pass through life with a blindfold on your eyes,
right?
Because you can't really analyze what you're going through at the moment. So only later they take the blindfold off and you can turn around and look at what you just went through.
Totally.
So you can analyze it, right? So only then you can actually have an opinion on what you're going through, because what you're going through in the moment just feels like you're just kind of going through it.
It's hard to have an objectivity about what you're going through.
Like
time gives you objectivity, but in the moment it's just subjective. And I think that I think that also just like growing up and having kids make you look back at your own life and experience.
How many kids do you have? One? Two?
I've got 2 kids.
Wow. How old?
2 kids, 4 and 6. 4 and 6, and yeah, I'm just a little bit more aware that I look at the way that I've grown up, and I'm assessing what are the things that I've grown up that in the moment maybe I didn't like, but actually made me who I am. Is important to carry over into how I teach my kids, you know. So, and that type of reassessment, you know, I think like kids become like the instigator for that type of mentality to occur. But then like I go back constantly and like look at like where I've grown up. Like my mom and dad just recently came and visited me, and I just went on Google View, and we were trying to find our old homes in the different places that we've lived on Google View.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it was just such a weird, surreal experience, like going through that with them. You know, because I think you're trying to unlock things in your past that you can kind of carry, and it sounds kind of philosophical, but I think as an adult, you do that.
It's very clear, actually. It's like, you know, it's interesting that you have analyzed that, right? Because you become analytical when you grow up. Maybe some people too much, but you know, it's the analysis of becoming a father, you know, makes you analyze your own father, and you know how it was to be a child of our family and all that. You know, it's like interesting. So all this makes you who you are, and then the YDA happens. Is there for you, knowing that you actually kind of won 2 years in a row, right? Like you 2 or
2 years.
Is there a before and after YDA? Do you think the YDA actually was what was the experience of winning it?
I mean, I will say this because the experience of it, winning it, was amazing, because you get recognition from peers, which is which is amazing. I think one thing that I realized very, very early on was that I can't rely on outside validation to keep the motor going. I mean, I was signed before YDA. A lot of the kind of the metrics of other people's success in a way would I feel like was kind of in play already when I got to YDA.
Yes.
And I think the recognition and standing with peers and meeting new peers there that I now like, those relationships that I've built during those 2 times, you know, they exist to this day.
Absolutely.
But in terms of and this is almost just like a mental thing that I almost like don't allow myself to almost put any prestigious event too much on a pedestal, because it makes me inactive and it makes me passive.
Yes.
I've tried to always, the thing that I always, because I get a couple of directors ask me about the process of getting signed.
Yes.
And I say, look, I have no advice for you except that if you were to get signed, don't change anything about what you're doing. If you are hustling right now with personal work, with you know, with work that is not commissioned, but is like, it's your way for people to see your vision. Keep doing that, even when you get signed, because I think a lot of, and I've heard directors I heard reps talk about, a lot of directors get complacent after they've been signed, hoping for reps and EPs to keep churning at the machine or going out and trying to sell them. But if you don't create new work just as like an exercise, it's really hard for anyone else to sell you. Exactly. So for me, that like the personal responsibility and onus of always trying to like, for me, it's just exercising the muscle, trying to like exercise the muscle, doing something tangentially different from what I've done before. That's super, it's super important for me for personal development, but it's also super important for me to keep putting stuff in at YDA or to my reps, you know, or into my EPs that they can kind of put out, you know. And yeah, I mean, again, I think it's just important for me to kind of distinguish it in that way. I think if I'm honest, I don't think YDA gave me, got me signed. Like I had those things. I think YDA did help a lot of initial interest just with like more boards coming in.
Yes.
But it's created for me, the most valuable thing is relationships that kind of carry on to this day.
That's one thing that everybody says, which is very interesting, because which says a lot about what it is. I think some directors arrive like you did at the YDA with already, I always say like the engine was already started, right? You were actually putting from first gear to second to third, right? You were actually moving already, you know.
Right. For me,
some directors actually start their engine there, right? Like their professional engine, let's put it that way. Not that they
well, yeah, so I think the thing for me is so Paul and I was saying Paul and I worked in Sydney, and we both worked as editors for this. We worked for a church.
Paul Nevison.
We worked for a church, and we were like editing. And while we were editing, like I would take a lot of my free time. I would go to New Zealand, go shoot a short film with or like a thing with my wife. And I was trying to build my portfolio in a way as a director during our off times. And so when I came off that experience working for the church, I had like 3 or 4 projects that I had done as a quote unquote unprofessional, unsigned director. And then I got signed that first year. Soon afterwards, I got signed to Variable, a company in New York. I moved to New York, and in that first year, I think I got signed in January, and in that first the April that year, we did that project Rocket Wars. And that was the project. That was the first year that I went to YDA. And so that was April. And in June, in July, I shot the Audi commercial, which went to YDA as well. So for that first year, within that first year, I had...
You beat me on the Audi commercial. I'm just going to say this because you and me were on the finals.
Oh, interesting.
Not as a director, obviously, but me as a production company. We got to the finals. We got to the final 2, and you won. And I was like, oh. And then you went to the... No, that's fine.
Yeah, so that was an interesting year because I had just moved to New York in August.
Yep.
Previously.
Yep.
In January, I signed to Variable. I had actually done a short film, which we didn't put into the YDA, called Anomaly, just because it was super long.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of kind of interest on the back end of that short film. And then when we did Rocket Wars in April, those two projects, I think, got kind of a lot of interest. But then I think it was Audi as well, just the first commercial basically that I had done. Yeah. It was like there was a bit of interest in that. But so that was the first year, and then the second year after that, I was realizing, because I did Audi and then I did a Valvoline commercial in December of that first year, and I was like, wow, I'm gonna get stuck doing cars. This is not good. This is not good. And then I think that was December. In January, I wrote the idea for Mr. Martyr. Yep. On the back end, I had done Valvoline, I had done Buick, a commercial Buick that I shot in China, and then there was another video called or commercial Dolce Gusto, a coffee commercial. Yep. And on that coffee commercial, I was a little depressed, if I'm honest, because I was not doing the work that I really wanted to do, and I could see myself going into this like very kind of high-end digital cars and stuff that I felt like I didn't want to do. Yep. So I wrote, coming back from the shoot the one day in London on the coffee commercial, I wrote the idea for Mr. Martyr. Yep. And I just wrote it as literally just, I was kind of frustrated. Yeah. I just wrote it as an idea, didn't know what it would live on, whether it be a music video or whatever. So I wrote it out, very simple, and then I listened to Spotify, and I just went on my Discover Weekly playlist, and I think I was searching for a track that could fit. I couldn't find anything, so I was listening to Kanye, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I knew I couldn't do anything for Kanye, so I was listening to songs similar to, or artists, similar artists.
Like, and I found the algorithm, right, that tell you, like, exactly, if you like this, you're gonna like this. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. And so I found the Young Fathers track, and I was like, wow, this is insane. And I was just like looking at the idea and the track, and I was like, this could work. And then it took me a couple of weeks, months to kind of figure out where I was going to shoot. I was looking in Kiev, I was looking in Paris, I was looking in New York. Eventually we ended up landing, shooting in Paris.
Yeah.
And then again, around that same time, I was like, I want to do something that's different from this, like slightly different than this in terms of tonality. Yep. I wrote the idea with Khalid for Medicine. Yes. And so that idea, I just wanted to do something that was like really angsty and really almost like angry with Mr. Martyr, and then do something that's like really beautiful and emotional with the Medicine track. And we were actually looking at an Agnes Obel track, a completely different track, because these are not commissioned pieces of work. I was just frustrated, trying to like make something that I could put out that would give me that would be a different muscle to stretch, and also I really wanted to get into music videos and out of cars.
Yes.
And last minute, I changed the track to Medicine, and I reached out to Daughter. I said, "Can I license the track?" They said, "You can license the track," and then we got it out. And those two projects, again, with Valvoline early on the year, so those three projects went into the next year of the YDAs.
This is like, I didn't know all this backstory, which I actually like you telling me about this backstory, because I think it is something that I tell young directors a lot.
Right.
I tell directors a lot, right? Don't wait. If you're a director and you want to flex your muscles, to use your term, flex your muscles.
Right.
When I wanted to become a director, and I'm 110 years old, right?
Right.
Feels like a billion years ago. I couldn't be a director.
Right.
So today, if you want to be a director, if you want to tell a story, if you have an idea, you can actually produce it. You can actually do it. You can actually go out and figure out a way to do it. You can actually figure out somebody that wants to do it with you, which is even better.
Yeah.
And I think the never standing still is something that is very much something that I cannot teach that easily to young directors. because I think being curious, which is where we started from in this conversation, is exactly that, is being always like, you were even more mature than I thought you were, because you were conscious of your career.
Right.
So you were conscious of the fact that careers are niched, right? Directors are niched within a little hole of, you're going to always become car directors. Cars, you're going to always do cars. You're going to be called cars. And I think the diversity of work that you instigated yourself to do, right? Which you actually did well, because most of it actually went to actually split your career or give you, is a very interesting concept. I think the concept of having talent, but also never stopping. Or not having somebody have to commission you something.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? It's huge to me.
Yeah, it's dangerous. I mean, I would even say it's like dangerous for a career, because it's dangerous. I think there's a lot of things with like advertising and even music video, that landscape, that is potentially dangerous to a lot of aspiring filmmakers.
Yes.
And I want to be careful how I say that, but it's so easy to get, I mean, not even necessarily good, but be considered for a lot of projects. And, like as soon as you're hot, it's like it can be easy to get a lot of work.
Yes.
Or to go on a lot of pitches. You may not win, but to go on a lot of pitches. And you can go on a lot of pitches and waste years of your life.
Yes.
So there's the temptation of you can make a lot of money.
Yes.
When your career starts going really well, you get trapped into getting the good work, which you're always like, when you're young, you're not pitching, 5% of what you're pitching on is good. And then when you get a little older and more established in the career, maybe 70% of what you're pitching on is good.
Yes.
And then it's really hard to take the time to sit back and go, hey, for me, for instance, my interest is...
Do I want to do that? Do I want to do this? Is this going to help me do that? Am I going to go, is this going to help my voyage towards wherever, right?
Yeah, and there's so many people in our industry that like want to... I know, and maybe I talk to similar-minded people, but that want to make features, that want to tell stories in a longer canvas, that are so interested by people in a longer format, that they want to tell three-dimensional stories, which is hard just because the real estate in commercials, you just don't have that much time. And so I want to be careful. Like, I value commercials. I really do. I love commercials. Like, the thing that almost like got me to pick up a camera was a Nike commercial called Nike Addicted. And so that to me is a seminal piece of work that'll always sit in my subconscious as that's part of the reason why I picked up a camera in the first place. But, I look at the films that have like really moved me, Paris, Texas being one of them, and that's what I want to work on that canvas. I want to tell stories in that canvas. And so I don't want to be sidetracked all the time or stuck really, but by the prospect of making more money, I honestly try never to do stuff for the money. I feel like maybe to the annoyance and the frustration of my EPs, but
I can imagine.
I like to let the creative kind of dictate what I do, but I think even then it's really for a director, and for me, my mind, like I need to like lock out of commercials for a time being and like lock into longer form. Otherwise, I don't have the discipline.
But that's the way your brain as a creative director works, right? You want to write something one day, and then you don't want to do music videos only, and you don't want to do cars, and then you want to do cars because you don't mind cars. So let me do cars, but don't make me do only cars, right? But at the end, I want to, maybe do a feature film, on Coney Island, right? So it's I find that very interesting, because directors that I have always loved have always been directors that have never stopped. Haven't had the 30-second be their limit. Haven't had the typology of films that they were doing, or commercial films that they were doing, be the limit. So they've always like one of my favorite directors is an American guy. His name is Rich Lee, right?
Right.
He comes from a background that is very interesting because Rich has, made sets in wood carving, right? For theaters, like for theater shows, and then started doing previs for Hollywood films, and then music videos, and he does a lot of work of that kind. But he never stops. If he wants to go and shoot his grandmother making tortillas, he's going to go and shoot his grandmother making tortillas, and it looks fantastic, right?
Right.
Because it is inside the you have to vomit it out.
You have to, and you have to have that curiosity. I mean, I wrote a script like 2 weeks ago, and again, I'm not like the greatest screenwriter. I'm really interested by stories, and I'm like trying to learn dialogue. But I just I phoned a collaborator, a friend of mine yesterday, and I said, hey, I've like written the script out. Would you come and sit with me? Just to, I mean, I said to him, literally the words that I used was, I vomited, I puked the script out. It's so bad. But there's something in it, and I know if I have someone to soundboard it with me, kind of throw it back and forth.
Fix it. We might actually embroider part of it. Yeah.
Exactly. We can kind of dial it in, and he's like, yeah, I'd be totally down. And so I've done that now with like 2 writer friends, actually 3 writer friends of mine, and I'm just like, let just vomit out that curiosity, and then let's collaborate with someone that can like help kind of pull it out. I don't want to. I love collaboration a lot, so and it sharpens me. So I definitely feel like that is a part of my process. This is my office, my apartment is just around the block, but it's been sitting empty. My office has been empty, and I've like realized how much I miss the people that are in my office that I share the space with, because it gives me like, I'm like, hey, can you check out this edit? Can you read this page of my script? I share actually Dan DeFelice. He's another director that was part of the YDA. He just did opposite me. Another director, Jared Connect, sits over there. So yeah, they're my mates. We do life together. Like we share kids' birthdays together. But that type of I mean, it's not even that we collaborate so much anymore, but just the rubbing up against each other is fuel for the kind of the creative.
That is very much about who you are and your upbringing, right? So it says a lot about the fact that you learned from the cultural experiences you've had, and you've learned from the experiences that you've had, right? But you also are probably one of those people that doesn't stand still and feels like they don't have to stand still in one place. And whenever somebody says, hey, stand there and look at cars, you're like, I don't want to just look at cars. I want to actually fly a kite, and you're doing something else, and that is interesting. That says a lot about who you are and the type of work that you do, which is the reason why then, at the YDA and or in the type of work that you do, you have such a plethora of diversity in the things that you like to do.
Right.
And also you do it well, I must say. Like you excel because you have a look, and you kind of are nerdy about the way you actually creatively nerdy about the way you
No, I'll take that. I'm glad. Look, I'm glad that's your observation, because I think you're right. Not I think you're right. I in terms of just like looking into the intention, I'm like glad. But like I haven't done comedy really a lot. I did one video that is kind of more satirical for young fathers called Toy, and it's kind of playful, but it's kind of angsty. But that's something I'm really wanting to do more of. So I'm like working on an idea that I don't want to share right now, but that blends fashion, fashion and like a Borat mockumentary style humor. That is kind of, hopefully it's kind of comedic and fun, and I want to do more fashion work, and it's like I want to bring those two together. and who knows whether I'm going to be good at it. But that's also really important for me to almost like say, is like, I could actually suck at it, but it's really important for me to try.
But look, I will use that sentence because it is very important for me to try, which is, I think that sentence is kind of a good way of summing up, everything that you've talked about, because you need to try it. Right? You don't feel like this job is to pay your rent or pay your mortgage or pay your kid's school. It will pay your mortgage and your kids' school, but it will also, I think, it's about you. Growing, you understanding yourself also. So it's very interesting to me. I think it's a great instinctive thing that you have, and I didn't know you before we talked, and I think it was very clear from the type of work that you do that you are that type of person that doesn't stand still.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like the feeling of. I've like chatted to a bunch of people, like, and maybe none of them would kind of admit this, but I see a lot of people that want to outdo themselves. It's like I do this, and the next thing that I do has to be there, and the next thing that I do has to like be better than that. And a lot of them kind of sit still then, because it's like it's a fool's errand to try and outdo yourself. Because you might think you did better, and then nobody else thinks you did better, and then it's like it's like so fatiguing, and it's like heartbreaking. So for me, like, the journey has always been, I want to try something I haven't tried before, even if it's like the core of it's the same, but like tangentially it's different. Like the outer layer of what I'm doing is a little bit different. That's been like really important for me, is to try something slightly different. And like a case in point in that is I did this like this one take video of a dude just like throwing a basketball into a hoop in the beginning of winter. It's so simple. But I've like never really kind of done anything that was just like one take or like a single take video. And you look at it and it's like, it's the simplest thing to do. Yeah, you're right. But I just wanted the exercise of doing that, And I was like,
I mean, the exercising of the muscle, which is, I think, again, another expression that you use, is very good, because you don't feel like that for you as a director, it's a one muscle job. Right? It's you're not using all your bicep, right? It's like you feel like this business is about working out everything. Now, the thing that will kind of underline in a good way is the fact that I think it is true that you want to try new things, but I think you want to try new things that you think that you can do, which is a very big difference. I have a lot of directors that have tried new things just to try them, so that they've said, but they've not been conscious of whether they could do it before they actually tried it, right? And that's kind of a difference that I see. I think you need to actually have your own evolution bring you there, right? So it's interesting. But
I think like that was a thing that I learned like 2 or 3 years ago. I don't want to whiplash. I want to evolve. So I don't want to jump, boom, 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 boom. It's like I want to go boom and grow and grow and grow and grow. So that's more important to me than like, okay, now I think I can do this, but there has to be like a natural curiosity that's tempered with skill set,
But there's one thing, and then we will kind of, I could talk forever about all these things, and I think I respect you as a director so much that I could even longer. But there's one thing that is interesting to me, is that which you should take as a compliment, which is there's always you inside the things that you do. So whether you're doing a music video, whether you're doing a short film, whether you're doing, there's always something that is yours inside there, because you don't try to do as much as you can try, maybe the format or the look and feel or whatever it is, there's always something that is yours inside. You can see it. You can see the fil rouge, right? The red line that goes through the work. And I think that is something that is very interesting, because it makes you authorial in the way you move around in your things, right? Your feature film will have the same feel that you will want to give it because it's yours. It's It's your vomit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, I think that's the hope. I think that's what I appreciate about other filmmakers that I really admire is they do have a voice, but their voice can sit in the different genres. They, but
you use Scorsese, right? You use Scorsese, black and white film about a boxer, and then super crazy film about a guy in Wall Street, and then now his next movie is going to be a Western, I think, from what I hear. So Salomon, we'll just unfortunately I could talk forever, but we need to conclude this. I wanted to thank you for the really nice conversation. I was really happy that you said yes to it, and I know why, because you actually enjoy the business so much and your business, and I think you have the right mind to actually kind of continue this way, continue kind of experimenting the things that you want to experiment. I'm very excited that we had a conversation that was so profound, maybe a little too philosophical sometimes, but I think that's the point. I think I wanted people to know what the winners end up doing and what the winners actually of the YDA come from, where they come from, and what their talent is about. So that said, I can't but thank you for the time.
Pleasure.
And I hope you enjoy you're not in lockdown anymore, right?
We are on lockdown still. Our phase reopening starts on June 8th.
Crazy.
Yeah.
We've been open since May 4th.
Oh wow.
And we went through very stages of different kind, and so it's now we're completely reopened. Like even swimming pools are open as of.
Oh wow! It's back to normal basically for you guys?
Normal.
But masks? Do you have to wear masks?
Everybody wears masks.
Okay.
I went to work walking and came back walking yesterday, and I took some street photography, like stole people's pictures, and I took them home, and I was trying to figure out how many people are wearing masks. It's like incredible. Everybody's wearing masks.
Wow. But okay, so like cinemas open?
Cinemas are not open.
Okay.
But as of yesterday, even gyms are open.
Oh wow. Wow.
Cinemas are the last ones to open right now, because cinemas and clubs, obviously.
Right.
And events, very big events like it's scary for the commercial industry, for the filmmaking industry. Like, I don't know when things are going to go back to normal, and like when companies are going to want to spend again. Yeah. Well, we're going to come out of this very poor.
Yes.
I've been calling it the war of the poor.
Well, maybe financially poor, but like emotionally rich. Like if we spend time with our families, if we've
absolutely,
like hopefully that's part of the lesson that we learn is like don't get so enamored with work.
Since I'm talking to you from the future, right? That's not going to happen.
Right.
Everybody has started like doing the same mistakes that they were making before. I actually thought that we would come out of this a little stronger.
Right.
A little, I thought, if every one of us changed by 5%.
Right.
10%, that's a lot.
Right.
I really hope so. I think some of it will stay with us, and I think the idea of the lockdown was scary, and I think a lot of people actually learned a lot of things, from making bread to being with your family, which is actually incredible.
Yeah, and it's hard for a lot of people, but it got sweet.
Absolutely.
For us, it was really hard, and then it got really sweet.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very interesting. I went through the same stages of that. So
right.
Salomon, again, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Same to you, Karim.
And again, it was a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
See you in Milano.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ciao.
All right.